All right, are we good, Kristen?
1 minute. Okay, now we are recording.
There we go. All right, perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Johnson, and I call this regular meeting of the Major Exodus and Oversight Committee to order. We are conducting this meeting by teleconference this evening, and it is being recorded. The agenda for the meeting is on the city's website at www.santa-ana.org. Members of the public will have the opportunity to address the Major Exodus and Oversight Committee regarding agenda and non-agenda type items during the public comment section of this meeting. Even though we are not physically meeting together, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance wherever you are. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks everyone. And staff, if you could call the roll for us.
Okay, Member Hernandez, Member Cargosian,
Here.
Member Lewis,
Here.
Member Lugo, Member Pereira,
Here.
Vice Chair Landaverde,
Here.
Chair Johnson.
Yep, I'm here.
We have a quorum.
All right, excellent. And so this will be the time for the public to comment on agenda and non-agenda type items. Staff, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on agenda type items?
We do not.
All right, excellent. And so our next item is item number 1 of the agenda, which is the consent calendar, and it consists of approval of the minutes from our March 9th, 2022 meeting. Are there any edits or comments regarding the minutes in the consent calendar? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Thank you. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Member Cargosian. So we have a first and second, and seeing no discussion, staff, if you would please call the vote, please.
Member Cargosian,
Yes.
Member Lewis,
Yes.
Member Pereira,
Yes.
Vice Chair Landaverde,
Aye.
Chair Johnson.
That's a yes for me also.
We have a quorum.
All right.
Motion
Excellent.
passes.
Or a pass, yeah. All right, so now on our next item, which is number 2 on the calendar. And so staff, if you want to go ahead and take it away, I think you have a revenue update for us.
Yes, we do. Do you see it now? All right, good. So good evening, committee members. So my name is Alex Trinidad. So I am the Assistant Director here at the city, and I will be providing you with the update on Measure X revenues through June 2022. Next slide. So this is a summary of total receipts received for 12-month periods for fiscal year 21-22. So the total for the year equaled $86 million. So this amount is net of fees. So as you can see on the chart, the city receives estimates advances throughout the year, and it's cleaned up or trued up every 3 months. So for example, the reporting period for March is cleanup for first quarter of 2022, and the reporting period for June is cleanup for second quarter of 2022. Next slide. So this is a comparison between our prior fiscal year, which is 21, and most recent fiscal year 21-22. So the receipts periods are from July through June. So the net increase compared to the prior year is $10.9 million. So this represents a 15% increase. So for comparison, in the prior year, there was an 18% increase compared to the prior year. So the increase in revenues is due to e-commerce sales and strong economic activity. So one of the reasons for the increase in the e-commerce sales is due to the waiver decision. The states can generally require out-of-state sellers to collect and remit sales tax on sales tax to in-state consumers, even if the seller has no physical presence in the consumer state. In addition, strong performance in general retail section, food products, and transportation perform more during the year. In the general retail section, we saw an increase in purchasing during the pandemic, and this has continued through now. So many people started purchasing general consumer goods using online retailers such as Amazon, and in combination with the waiver decision, this has resulted in an increase in this sales tax area. For food products, more consumers are eating out at restaurants, and also inflation has increased prices, which contributed to a higher sales tax. Lastly, transportation sector did better than anticipated, which includes new and used auto sales, and also this includes fuel service stations. For the auto sales, an increase in demand and in combination with price increase resulted in increase in sales tax. In similar manner, fuel prices soared as crude price increased during the initial war with Russia and Ukraine. So this contributed to an increase in this area as well. Next slide. So this is a summary of actual results for Measure X revenues for the past 3 years. So the estimated revenues for fiscal year 22-23 remain the same with no changes as previously presented to the council. So the estimated revenues for fiscal year 23 stands at $88.1 million. So the next steps include meeting with a sales tax consultant in September to discuss sales tax and economic data. So there are several economic factors going on, such as decrease in GDP, gross domestic product, Russia's war with Ukraine, and ongoing inflation concerns. So we still don't know the impact to our revenues, if any, but our consultants will be able to provide additional information based on actual results for the most recent quarter. We will update the committee during the next quarter meeting. If any updates are needed to estimated revenues, these would be presented to City Council in November. Next slide. So this concludes our revenue update, and so we are available for any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. So I'm going to do a walk around and just based on how I see on my screen. So we'll start with Member Perea.
No questions.
Okay. And Member Kargosian.
No questions. Thank you.
Member Lewis.
No questions for me. Thank you for the update.
Excellent. And Vice Chair Landaverde.
No questions. Just to comment that it looks really good. Whoever did the slide, I like it. I think it's updated from the last time, and it looks nice. I like the presentation. So.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks. Yeah, I when I saw the slides too, I was like, oh gosh, this is nice. This is a good looking slide. So good job. I don't know if it's a new standard or not, but yeah, it looks it's very easy on the eyes and easy to understand. Alex, have we ever like come close to budget, meaning that like it seems like we're always blowing it out of the water to budget. Is that
right.
Are we just intentionally a little bit conservative? Is it are things changing so rapidly, and obviously inflation and price increases amount of that people have to pay on sales tax also, and including the 1.5%.
Sure. I'll give you my response on that, Kat. I'm sure she has her own opinion. So I feel like things are changing so quickly, like you said, price increases and changes with the economy, that it's kind of hard to kind of land at a number specifically. Like, for example, this year, we had estimated of 84 million. We ended up at 86, so a little bit higher. So I think we were somewhat close, but also be mindful that we kept revising revenue estimates throughout the year. I forgot our initial estimate, but we've been revising almost every quarter, correct, Kat? But we ended up, our current estimated revenue, at least on our books, it was 84 million, so it ended up at 86.
And are we updating almost every quarter? It almost feels like, or is it twice?
Maybe
Actually, I
about
think-
twice a year. But to more fully answer your question with the, what do we use from our consultant? So our consultant gives us three numbers. They give us most likely, and they give us like a very optimistic, and then they give us a pessimistic number. We pick the most likely number from them. So the middle of the road one that they label most likely. But I can tell you they are fairly conservative. So that most likely number is still kind of a conservative number. The other thing too, unfortunately, I mean, it used to be that things were fairly predictable, but the last few years have been anything but predictable. And so I think if anything, the consultant is leaning maybe even just a little bit more conservative than what they normally would. And we just keep getting shocked, every new quarter of data that comes in, it's surprising. It's kind of like being on a wild ride, because not only, the uncertainty of how the pandemic affected things, but, and we found out that our sales tax was going up even all through the pandemic. But now, how the war in Ukraine is impacting the world economy, inflation, everything else. So, I mean, the last several years, for most of the time period that Measure X has been collected, we've been on a wild economic ride. And so, under normal circumstances, I think I would be a little bit harsher with our consultant, like, hey, come on, you're making us look stupid here. But just consider, each quarter I ask them about their assumptions and how their assumptions changed. And I feel like I've got to cut them some slack because, of what's been going on in the economy in general. So we're just, we just update it each time there's a meaningful update, and that's all we can do, and just bring it forward to council with our quarterly budget updates.
Okay. Is the consultant seeing what, what we're experiencing, or maybe Kat, maybe I'm assuming maybe all the finance directors across cities that you guys probably keep tabs on each other. Are other cities seeing this also?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. A lot of cities are seeing this. The state itself is seeing this. But there are a few cities that are not in such good condition, and it really comes down to your mix of what's in your city generating sales tax. But to answer your question, bell-shaped curve, most of us are seeing these kinds of things.
All right, awesome. Perfect. That's it for me. Unless anyone else has anything that came to mind, then you can wave your hand if so, but okay. Otherwise, I think our next agenda item is our expenditure update, if I recall correctly here. Kind of lost my script, but I think that's correct.
Yeah. All right. Good evening again, committee members. So I will be providing you with a brief update on Measure X expenditures, and also just general updates. Next slide. All right, so our finance staff is currently on track for closing fiscal year 21-22. So our fiscal year end process usually starts around June and typically ends in December. It is not completed until our auditors complete their audit work. So several one-time spending items were added during the first quarter and also the mid-year budget reports. Due to recently added items, staff will request City Council approval of budget carryovers for approximately $13.9 million of fiscal year 21-22 spending items. So this is scheduled to go to council on September 20th. So this is just a change in the timing of cash flow, as staff requires additional time to complete these items. So we are currently preparing for the year-end audit process that should start in October. So once our auditors complete their work, the report should be provided to the committee in December. Next slide. So we continue using separate ledger accounts or just accounts for Measure X expenditures. So this has helped us better track our expenditures related to Measure X, and we'll continue on reviewing for additional improvements if available. In addition, we continue on focusing on one-time expenditures. Like I mentioned before, there were several one-time items added throughout the year for Measure X. And lastly, we want to continue maintaining a strong general fund reserve. Right. So here's a preliminary fiscal year 21-22 expenditure report. Since we are still closing our books, our actual spent amount is subject to change from what is currently reported in the slide. So in addition, as previously mentioned, there will be approximately 13.9 million of carry forward amounts from fiscal year 21-22 to the next fiscal year 23. So we should be able to bring a final expenditure report once the year is closed and the auditors complete the review. So this concludes our update on the expenditures and available for any questions you may have.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Alex. We'll do the same walk around in the same order. So Member Perea, you have any questions for Alex?
Yeah, hi Alex. I really love your presentation as well. I love graphs. The question on the carryovers, specifically with fixing streets and youth services, are this this amount that wasn't spent because services were not provided, were not as skilled, were anticipated, or is this just in general extra funding that was not allocated?
Sure. So like I mentioned, a lot of these were added during the first quarter and the mid-year report. And so basically it didn't allow the staff here at the city to work on these projects. And so in order for them to complete them, we're basically carrying forward these available appropriations to next fiscal year. So the plan is to complete it in fiscal year 21-23.
I think what you might be asking is that these are actually capital project carryovers. So they're not like for operations, because something was closed or whatnot. You might have noticed that the actual spent and the expected carryover totals up to be, a few $1 million less than the total spending plan or the total revenue received. So when we sort out, when we finish closing the books and we make sure that we've combed through all of this and we've got all our numbers correct, it may be that once again, we're in a situation where Measure X will have contributed a couple $1 million to the general fund reserve.
Yeah, and to add to that, you're right. Most of these are one-time funding. For example, fixing streets. Some of the projects that we're carrying forward, like for example, streetlight maintenance. Another one's like traffic calming. Another one is alley improvement program. For unrestricted, the main one that we're carrying forward is for the Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center. There was, I think we allocated 5.4 million for improvements, and that one is the main one for unrestricted general purpose. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. Those are all my questions.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Carlos. How about Member Cargosian?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
All right, Member Lewis?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
All right, excellent. And Vice Chair Landaverde?
No comments. Thanks for the update.
All right, excellent. Yeah, I think I'm good also. So for the first time ever, no questions for me. So
good. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, it's nice to see our city doing well here. Looking forward to seeing those streets get fixed too. So all right, and I think that's the end of our business calendar that we have. I'm not seeing any members of public having joined us. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so do we have any additional comments to make from our staff?
Yes, actually, I have a couple items that I wanted to comment on. Just things that you may be interested in knowing. So on the September 20th agenda, in addition to our carryover report, the city council is going to consider whether or not to reduce some of the cannabis tax rates. So that's an interesting item. If they do reduce it, there will be a general fund impact, but I don't expect it to be really that material. So what we're looking at potentially, we're based on the council direction that we received at a separate workshop that they did on this topic. We're basically saying, okay, are recommending to reduce not really our recommendation, it's just based on what we heard at that workshop. We're recommending to reduce the supply side rate down from 6% to 1%. So supply side, that's going to be your manufacturing, your distribution, cultivation, et cetera. And if the city council adopts that recommendation, which was largely based on their discussion, taking it down from 6% to 1%, we're probably looking at losing somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1 million of revenue a year. And you might remember that 2/3 of that gets set aside into a cannabis public benefit fund, which is earmarked specifically for youth services and enforcement type activities. And then the other 1/3 just goes into the general fund. So, we could be looking at a $300,000 to $400,000 impact on our budget. And, even though $300,000 or $400,000 is a lot to you and me and, makes the difference, in different programs or employees providing service to our residents, et cetera, as a percentage of the general fund budget, it's a very tiny percentage. So that's one item that I wanted to give you a heads up on. The other item is we do have a ballot measure on the November election. It's to restructure the city's business tax. So we have a tax levied on businesses that operate in the city, and it's called a business license tax, but it's not regulatory. So I hate that word licensing, but there it is. It's what's in our Muni code. But it's non-regulatory, it's just to raise revenue. And this tax, the last time that it was significantly overhauled was, I think, 1986 or 1987. And what we have it currently is a regressive tax rate. And so if you're familiar with looking at tax tables for, the IRS or whatever, the more money you make, you get into a different tax bracket, right? Well, the tax structure here is regressive, meaning that if your business makes a tiny amount of money, you're paying a higher rate per dollar than a business that makes a lot of money. They're paying a lesser rate. And so the business community for some time has been asking us to tackle this. And so we finally did and pulled together the ballot measure and, the ordinance that goes with it. And so we're looking at a single tax rate for the gross receipt payers. So no more regressive structure. Everybody would pay the same rate. We're also looking at reducing the initial business or the initial tax deposit. So let's say you're starting a business in Santa Ana and you come in and you want to do your business license. And so you have to make an initial tax deposit because you don't have any actual receipts to file your taxes on. And so that's going to be reduced. If it passes, it's going to be reduced down to $200. And then we're streamlining some of the calculations. We're collapsing some of the categories and putting them into gross receipts. All of the flat rate categories we're decreasing slightly. We're deleting a few categories that just are no longer relevant. We're clarifying some language as it applies to gig economy businesses, kind of modernizing our municipal code, if you will. So we're making a lot of changes that we feel are needed, that the business community has been asking for. If this were to pass, our calculations indicate that 91% of the businesses in the city would end up paying less business tax. But it's overall net neutral to the city. And so the other 9% would probably pay more. And that's how it works. So your real large companies are going to end up paying more. We're also adding on utility companies. So right now they're exempted from paying the business tax. And that's kind of a mixed bag across cities. Some cities, the utility companies pay and some they don't. So we want to, eliminate that exemption for them and have them pay. But we're capping the business tax at $100,000. So let's take an example company, say like Southern California Edison. Well, they make millions and millions of dollars in the city of Santa Ana. And so, when you look at bringing them on and having them pay the business tax for gross receipts, that might be a huge amount of money, but there's a cap in there of $100,000. So the good news for our utility payers, even though the tax is on the business, we all know that sometimes they factor these things into their rates. For a large company like Southern California Edison, if they've got a maximum tax of $100,000, I'm sure you can appreciate that that's a very, very tiny number to them. So I don't anticipate that there will be a trickle down effect to our utility users here in the city. So that's basically the update that I wanted to provide on that. Obviously, I can't advocate or tell you how to vote, but I can just say that when we crafted this thing, we tried very hard to address a bunch of issues that we've heard from businesses over the years. And again, we think that 91% of the businesses in the city are going to end up paying less tax if this thing passes. And it only requires a 50% majority, a simple majority to pass. So that's good news. So we'll see what happens in November. But that's something else that you might be interested in.
All right, excellent. Well, that you took two things that are on my mind for sure. So that's great for getting some explanation on that. Appreciate that. All right, so and then we'll use this time to for members to make any comments that they might have, and so we'll just do a walk around again. So Member Perea.
No comments.
And Member Cargosian.
Do I remember correctly that we do have an opportunity at mid-year to kind of submit some recommendations to council about expenditures? Okay, and will we have the opportunity to meet and discuss that after the election so that we can kind of talk about how things went and kind of work our recommendations accordingly?
Yeah, you can certainly get started on that with your December meeting. We always have it slated for your March meeting to craft those recommendations for the budget process, but there is nothing stopping you from getting started on them during your December meeting, which certainly is after the election.
Okay, but they wouldn't have an opportunity to hear recommendations before the mid-year budget update, correct?
Your budget update is usually presented to City Council in February.
Oh, okay, got it. Yes. Okay, thank you.
And Member Lewis.
No comments.
All right, and Vice Chair Landaverde.
Just thank you to the staff for today. You guys are working so hard. So thank you.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, I echo the thanks for both Alex and Kat for both of your hard work, and Kristen for putting this all together. I have one comment that maybe Kat, that is you brought up the cannabis stuff, and a 6% to 1% drop on the supply side, and losing probably about $1 million of revenue from that 6 to 1, somewhere in the, I mean, we're all guessing, right? Is there, at what point does it make sense, at what point does the cost of administration to the city negate all the the revenue coming in? Are we close to that point, or is it?
Probably fairly close. Well, yeah. No, it's still worthwhile. Let's see. I kind of know some of the numbers off the top of my head. So in that public benefit fund where we have the money for enforcement activities, that includes a several $100,000 allocation for us for collection and audit, because we pretty much have one dedicated staff person who interfaces with these cannabis businesses and collects tax, which, as you can well imagine, is kind of a tricky thing because they are cash businesses. Primarily cash businesses. So we have one person, plus we hire a third-party auditor to do a rotating schedule of audits with our dispensaries and some of our businesses, our cannabis-related businesses. And so we spend several $100,000, and our supply side revenue would probably go down to about several $100,000. But the thing is, we still have that 20 million coming in from retail and medical that, it's still totally worth it for us to administer this, at least on our side. On the regulatory side, I still think that it's a benefit because a lot of the regulatory side, they pay fees for that. So it's not like a general public benefit.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say is that, hey, you kind of have almost a fixed, if you're gonna have any tax at all, you almost have a fixed cost. And to where if you bring it down, you still have that fixed cost because you have the non-supply side, with the retail side, I guess maybe it would be, okay, very good. That's is helpful. I mean, anytime is you got a small tax, and I live in the tax administration world, and with tomorrow being a due date, it's always on my mind of that. So I appreciate that. And then I think on the so on the business tax stuff, I think that there, if I remember correctly, is there a like a forgiveness? I don't know. I know that there's a.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep forgetting to touch on the tax holiday. We actually see it as a good thing in our experience, in our history, and this is true at multiple cities, my experience at other cities, plus the historical experience that we have here, is when you offer a tax holiday period, you typically bring in a bunch of people who didn't previously pay their business tax. So you end up with a net gain overall. And so basically the tax holiday, what we're going to do in conjunction, if this passes, is offer this where, let's say that you've actually been operating in the city for a few years, but you haven't been paying business license tax. You come in, you decide to pay it because now it's pretty affordable for you as a small business. We're not going to worry about past years. We're not going to worry about penalties or interest or anything. Just pay your current year tax. We're all good. We're just happy that you're now complying with our ordinance.
Very good. And does that process also involve making sure they're registered for sales tax and that type of stuff also, or is there a correlation between the two?
That's the thing. In some cases, yes, we do a little bit of due diligence. But for the most part, our tax is non-regulatory. So
Okay.
we're not going through and checking a bunch of boxes. We're just doing a minimal amount of effort on due diligence.
Okay, very good. Great. That those were my my areas of question. I'm glad that you preempted a lot of it. So that was awesome. Unless anyone else thought of something, I think we are. And I'm not seeing anyone trying to get my attention. So I wish everyone a great evening, and we'll go ahead and adjourn our. Oh, you know what? Actually, I had one other thing. So a reminder, like, Member Kargosian, you brought up a point in terms of like our next meeting. If anyone ever has items that we want to go over, we just need to let Director Downs and Alex and let them know about that ahead of time, so that way they can get it agendized. for our group. And so, something like, hey, let's start the expenditure recommendation type thing. That might be a good item for, for that December meeting. But that's not, we can, any other items, we kind of went through all the departments at one point and kind of got our baseline with that and whatnot. So anytime that anyone has something that they want to kind of talk about on the agenda, we just got to let our folks at the city know that. So, but and segueing into our next meeting will be December 14th, which is after the election. But I think that the way, if I recall correctly, we probably all will still be on the committee, I would imagine, still at that point. So we'll at least all have at least one more meeting all together before we'll have we have 3 wards, I think, and the mayor up for election. So we might have some changeover from the folks that we see in our squares here, but we'll have at least one more meeting all together. So I think that's it. So we're going to adjourn until December 14th at 6 o'clock. So excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night.